For my retribution, my ex-girlfriend taped all of her videos with app, and I did the same. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another story about Reddit cheating. Please click the subscribe button and the notification bell before we begin so you don't miss another cheating story. This happened to me about a year ago, and my current girlfriend urged me to come here and share my story with my cheating ex, as well as how my life has never been better, and my therapist agrees, so here we go. Because I'm very sure my ex knows about my main Reddit account, this is a throwaway. I was dating my ex-girlfriend, 25M, for 412 plus years. Let's name her Jess, 24F. We met while she was enrolled in my business management class at university. We were paired up on a big project for the semester, and we simply bonded, so I asked her out when we finished it, and she said yes. Those first few years of marriage were pure happiness. We were all very lovey-dovey with one another, and everything simply felt right between us. We rarely argued and never got into fights, and we talked with each other plainly and frankly. I truly believed she was the one with whom I would spend the rest of my life, and I was even saving up to buy her a ring, yet here I am. During the last 6 months of our relationship, she became increasingly aloof and made excuses for why we couldn't spend more time together. I assume this was usual because we were both out of university and had started working full-time jobs. It's worth noting that we never lived together, but after a while, she began to decline intimacy, despite the fact that both me and her have quite high libidos. We would usually do it at least once a day, because neither of us were ready to have children, thank God. I always wore protection and she was on the pill. We decided to spend the night at her apartment one night. I tried to start intercourse with her, but she declined. This was starting to irritate me, so I expressed my displeasure to her, but she simply stated that she wasn't happy with her body at the time and requested that I give her some space when it came to initiating intimacy. We both went to bed after I agreed, or at least she did. I just had a gut sense that something wasn't quite right, so I went to snoop on her phone once she was asleep. Yes, I know it's horrible, but I don't regret it, and discovered that she was hooking up with her serial cheating ex, 24M. Messages, photos, and full-fledged movies of them fucking were discovered. The videos fucked me up because she was acting and saying things that made me think of her as nothing more than a whore and a waste of space. All I could feel at the time was hatred for her, and when I glanced down at her while she slept, all I could feel was physical contempt. I then grabbed screenshots of all of the communications and forwarded them to myself, along with the other photos she had sent him, but not the videos because I couldn't bear sending THM. I went back to my apartment silently, taking whatever stuff I still had at her flat and putting them in my car. She contacted me in the morning and asked where I was, and I just gave her a short, credible reason, which she accepted. Now for some background information. Let me now introduce you to one of my closest childhood pals, Julia, 21F. Julia and I were really close from the time we were children until we graduated from high school. Her brother and I are best friends, and they live a block from my parents' house, which is where I grew up. I returned to my hometown for my cousin's wedding around a year after Jess and I got married and began hanging out with my old pals, including Julia and her brother. She admitted to having feelings for me later that night. I declined and informed her that I already had a girlfriend. She was understanding and apologized, and we didn't speak much after that since I didn't want to give her any sign that I was interested in a relationship with her because I was dating Jess. She was comfortable with it and had no problems understanding it. Because she doesn't use social media, the only way we could communicate would be through iMessage. During that period, I snapped a bunch of pictures of us all hanging out together again. About a week later, I returned to campus and showed Jess where I was and who I was with since she was curious about who I hung out with throughout my trip. A photo of Julia and myself appeared while we were looking through photos. She began to inquire about herself and her identity. I told her she was a childhood friend of mine and that she professed emotions for me during the trip, but I shut her down and showed her the text conversations to prove it. And she seemed to be okay with it. She revealed to me about a year later during a small argument we had that she was very anxious about her body and that seeing images of Julia made her feel even more insecure because Julia had a very slim figure and low. Stunning. I tried my hardest to assuage her anxieties, but I believe she never fully recovered. Returning to the story now, I texted my parents in my hometown and asked if I could stay with them for the next weeks since I needed to talk to them about something important, and they were concerned but agreed. I've been telling Jess that I'm going down to see my parents since I haven't seen them in a long time and I'd like to pay them a visit, and she hasn't batted an eyelid. I returned to work and explained the situation to my employer. I asked for a short break, and he told me to take as much time as I needed and return when I was ready. I went down there over the weekend and told my parents everything. They were appalled by her acts, and my mother informed me that if I ever took her back, she would never be permitted to stay at their house again. I told my mother not to worry. I had enough self-respect to never return her. I immediately sent Julia a message asking if we could talk. I went over to her flat after she agreed. I told her all I'd learned about Jess. I'm not sure what happened, but I believe everything hit me at that same moment, and I started crying uncontrollably, not only because I had lost someone I loved, but also because I had wasted so much time on her, and I would never get that time back. Throughout my complete collapse, Julia was there to console me. I calmed down after a while. She brought over some beverages, and we simply drank, watched movies, and played Mario Kart till 2 a.m. We were both very tipsy at this time, to say the least, and I couldn't really go back to my parents' house. She'd invited me to stay the night, which I accepted. We entered her room, and before we knew it, we were making out on her bed. She urged me to take out my phone and start recording right before we took off our clothes. As you can expect, we repeated the act several times that night. Julia was saying negative things about Jess the entire time we were doing it. Things like, "This pussy is so much tighter than that dirty whores," and things like that. I went to stop filming after our last go, and we went to bed. The next day, I awoke to the smell of her making breakfast, and we shared it. When I inquired why she wanted me to videotape what we did last night, she stated she wanted to assist me in getting some retribution. I never mentioned wanting revenge on Jess, but Julia must know me well enough to realize that I would seek vengeance simply because she treated me badly. She advised me to just send her the audio file from the tape and stop our relationship. She stated that she still has feelings for me and that she will wait for me to talk to Jess about it. I told her I couldn't guarantee her anything, and she replied it was fine. All she wanted to know was that I knew. After that, we said our goodbyes, and I returned to my parents' house, where they were concerned about my whereabouts last night. I explained that Julia and I were just catching up. My parents were relieved, but my father had a little grin on his face as he got ready for work. I'm sure he knows where I was that night. I copied the video from my phone to my computer and cut it down to just sounds and a black screen. After that, I spent the remainder of the weekend partying and having a good time with my friends, as well as spending a lot of time with Julia and possibly having intercourse a few times, no recording this time. When I told my supervisor that I would be returning to work in approximately a week, he said it was great, best boss ever. I immediately texted Jess, informing her that I had discovered her hooking up with her ex and enclosing all of the screenshots. "Treat me like a game and I'll teach you how to play" was my last message to her, and I included audio of Julia and me having sex before blocking her. I started getting spam calls and spam texts from a bunch of our mutual acquaintances and her family over the next few days. After that, it was mostly radio silence after I sent them all of the screenshots of the text messages I had. Her parents contacted to apologize for their daughter's actions, and that was the end of it. 1 year later, where am I now? I recently celebrated my 26th birthday with my family and Julia, my longtime girlfriend, who is now 22. I recently received a promotion at work, and Julia recently moved in with me, and she will graduate in just over a week. She transferred over to the university I went to for her final year. I maintain a consistent workout program. I am now 5'11", 165 pounds, and was always fairly thin as a child. I've never felt more proud of myself, and I've never felt so genuinely cared for. Now, a friend of mine told me that after I abandoned her, she discovered he was pregnant, and her ex-boyfriend, who had knocked her up, supposedly ghosted her. I couldn't be the father because I never went raw on her. She had an abortion, and her life has been a disaster ever since. She has an alcohol problem, and because to the video I provided her, she now has major body insecurity issues, which have ruined most, if not all, of her relationships. For her, I'm the one who got away, and she's the biggest bullet I've ever avoided. I still loathe her because the 4.5 years we spent together are gone forever. But I'm having the time of my life and couldn't be happier. Never settle for someone who does not appreciate you is my one piece of advice to anyone who has been duped. Go out and live your best life. The world is your oyster. Thank you for viewing, and be sure to check out our other infidelity stories videos. Please subscribe if you haven't already to get more daily Reddit cheating stories.